Okay, so we wind up New Testament base on the bottom. We'll continue about halacha about Kohen Gadol. That's not allowed to marry a bula. He has to have to marry a virgin. The song is all the halachas about almana, grusha, halala, zona. Also, he's not allowed to marry just a virgin. So the Gemara spoke about if he raped a woman, anusa, mafuta, raping, anusa is a rape, and mafuta is if she was seduced, then she agreed, but also they had relations. So the question is that she's not basul anymore. Means he raped her himself, and now he wants to marry her. So she's going to be considered a beula. He's not allowed to marry her. That's what we had yesterday. We spoke about shalokadarka, but surely he would not be allowed to marry her, even though he himself is the one who had relations. He's the one who made her into who took away her virginity. Also, he wouldn't be allowed to marry her. But the Brisa says, Tana Rabbana. Here the words say that he's not allowed to marry her, but it says if he married, he's married. Those words might imply that means he's allowed to stay married. That would be the simple word that even though he married her and he wasn't allowed to, but he's allowed to remain. And the Gemara is going to talk about if that means that, then why should it be so? If he's not allowed to marry her, so he shouldn't be allowed to remain married either. But then it continues about anusas chaveru, mufutas chaveru, that someone else raped her, a woman who was raped. She was not married, not almana, grusha, zona. Anusas chaver, we said the machlokas above on top of the page, upon the that if she was not married, it wasn't considered, and he was a regular man, he wasn't a puzzle. So that was machlokas. We pass that she's not a zona. That's what it says over here. She's not a zona. But below also says she's a zona. But this Bryce seems to go not like that, and therefore it says also he's not allowed to marry. But we'll continue the Bryce to see if they might mean that she's a zona or not. But she's definitely not a basula. She's not a virgin anymore. So if somebody had raped a woman, either anusa or futa, no difference if it was rape or was willingly, lo yisa, he's also not allowed to marry her. It doesn't continue, but if he did marry her, if she's allowed to stay married, it seems not. Surely he's not allowed to stay married, and we'll get to that also. Bimnasa, but it talks about if the child born is going to be a cholo. So there's a din that if there's a Kohen or a Kohen Gadol, surely if he marries a woman that he's not allowed to marry, we'll see today the Agdara what constitutes something that's going to make the child to be a cholo. Here he married a beula. He married a woman who's already had relations by somebody else. So it says a question if the child is a cholo. If the child is going to be considered a cholo, which means that he's profaned from the level of kuna, he loses the status of kahuna. That's called the cholo. We'll have more of it as we go on. And in kedushin, there's a sugya, all the sugyas about cholo. So that's the end of the brisa. So far, we just mentioned the brisa, difference of a Kohen Gadol having relations and marrying a woman who has not a basul anymore. She's not a virgin. And the brisa distinguishes between if it was from his own doing or was from somebody else. If it was own, so he says that he himself is not allowed to marry her, but if he did, he's married, whichever that means. And anusas chavero, the futas chavero, if she was raped or seduced by somebody else, he's not allowed to marry. And it talks about if the child born is going to be a cholo or not. Ad kind of brisa. So now the Gemara is going to analyze the beginning, and this goes back to the first brisa. It says "Amnosa nosei," and we're going to analyze what those words mean. If she's married, if he married her, she married. He raped a woman, and then or he seduced her. Then she agreed to marry him, and they weren't allowed to because it's a mechiyav asay, a mitzvah asay that he should only take a virgin. He took her. Can he stay married? So Rav explained, it doesn't mean he's allowed to stay married, even though it says if he married, he married. It doesn't mean he can remain with her. It means the marriage took place, and it's for some. The Gemara is going to say right away. What does it mean? For what did it take place? It has effect for something. We're not talking about kedushin. We're talking about nesuin. Kedushin. We know that chayv yaseh is tofas kedushin. They need to get if they want a divorce. But do they have to divorce? So Rav says yes. He must divorce. The most he beget. They're not allowed to stay remain. Not allowed to remain with her because she's a bula, and since she was a bula before marriage, even though it was his own doing, he's not allowed to stay with her. So he has to divorce her. So what does it mean if the marriage is a marriage? What does that mean? The halacha is the Torah says that if somebody seduces a woman, so he should marry her. But if they don't want to marry, if the father doesn't want to marry, then he has to pay her. He pays her 50 shkalim. Doesn't mean 50 shkalim of today. It means a lot of money. He has to pay her knas. He has to pay a fine. But that's only if he doesn't marry her. If he does marry her, he doesn't have to. By anusa, if he raped the woman, then even though he does have to marry her, that's the lacha below show he has to marry her, but also he has to pay a knas also. By anusa, by a rape, so then there's he has to marry her, and he can never divorce her, and also there's a fine. By Mafuta, it's only if he does not marry her. But if he does marry her, then there's no fine. So here, that's what the Torah is saying over. That's what the Gemara is saying. In Nasa Nasa, this Kohen Gadol, he seduced a woman, and they had relations. He married her. He wasn't supposed to because it's a chiyuv basei. He's not allowed to marry her. She's a bully. He was not allowed to marry her, but he did. He had relations as a marriage. So he did so much as taking her that he doesn't have to pay the knas anymore. She agreed to get married. So that's the halacha that if he marries her, he doesn't have to pay the knas. He doesn't have to pay the knas, but he's not allowed to remain with her because she's a bula and that's a chiyuv basei. So he has to divorce her. But so much they did accomplish that he doesn't have to pay the knas. But Inus, it wouldn't make a difference because he has to pay the knas anyway. So this halacha that it says in Nasa Nasi is only going to be relevant to the mafuta. So that was what we said. That's how Rav explained the brisa, that even though the brisa says the marriage is a marriage, in Nasa Nasi, it just means that he doesn't have to pay the knas if it was a mafuta. But as far as remaining with her, he's not allowed to remain with her. Mostly forget he has to divorce her because she was a bu'ula. He took her as a bu'ula. And that the Gemara is going to challenge. The Gemara is going to challenge if Rav could have said this point that he has to divorce her. Top line, Rav Gvia from the place of Kasil, I don't know what that is. He went and he said over this Gemara in the name of Rav that he has to divorce her. He told that to Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi said, how could it be? Amalei, Rav Ashi asked, Rav Yochanan Dami Tavayu, Bulgaris and Mukase, it's lo Yisa, Nasa Nasa. This also deserves to be highlighted. Bulgaris, Mukase, it's lo Yisa. Kohen, Gadol, has to marry a Basula. And we spoke about a Bulgaris. We spoke about a Bulgaris. That was Machokas in the Mishnah. Is a Kohen Gadol allowed to marry a girl once she's a Bulgaris? Rav Meir said not. Rabbi Elazar B'Shimon said yes, and had the Machokas in the Psukim yesterday. We passed like Rabbi Meir that he's not allowed to. Mukaseitz also says in the Mishnah in the name of Rabbi Elazar B'Shimon, we have it in brackets, that says also that he's not allowed to marry her because she doesn't have Basulim, she doesn't have her hymen, even though it was mechanically removed. So he's not allowed to marry her. But it does say, if he married her, here it means he is allowed to remain married. In this statement that a Bulgaris and the Mukha says he shouldn't have married her because she's not a Basula. But if he did marry her, he's allowed to stay married. Here he can't say any other pshat. There's no nothing. Here there's no. He wasn't mafater. This is nothing. He married a Bulgaris and he shouldn't have, or he married a Mukha says he shouldn't have. But if the marriage takes place, so it takes place, they can stay married. And why is that? Alma Sofalios Bulgaris Tachta or Sofalios Mukha says Tachta. The fact that the interesting thing about a bula is different than every other of the Isurim. You have Almana, Gusha, Halala, Zona. All of those are a status that doesn't change. If she's Almana, she remains to be Almana. So he wouldn't, even after he married her, he wouldn't be allowed to remain with her because each time that he has relations, he's having relations with a woman who was a widow. She doesn't lose the status of a widow. She's married to him now.
Compared to so we're comparing it to the Almana.
No, we're saying it's different. We're saying, I'm just giving, that was the introduction. Almana, Gusha, Halala, Zona, all those cases, once it happened forever. But a Ba'ula, the fact he's not allowed to marry he has to take a Basula, that wasn't expected that she should ever be a Basula, because when he marries her, after the first relation, she's not a Basula anymore. So the fact, and also Mukha says, the fact that she doesn't have the virginity, that was expected anyway when he's going to marry her, but he does take a Basula, and she is a virgin. After the first time, she's not anymore a Basula anymore. So the fact that the thing of the Basula is just that when he marries her, the first initial marriage should be that she's a virgin. And he did that. He did Avera. He shouldn't have married her. But once she's already married to him, so there's no more chisaron that she's a Bulgaris. Eventually she's going to become a Bulgaris also. He doesn't have to divorce her when she becomes a Bulgaris. Or Mukha says, if it somehow was removed mechanically, it doesn't make a difference. If it was roll her roll, so he removed it. So the Isser of Bu'ula is a one-time Isser. The Isser of Bu'ula is that he shouldn't marry the Bu'ula. But once he married the Bu'ula, we're not going to say that forever, that you're not allowed to stay with somebody who was Bu'ula when he got married to her. The rest of them, Almana, Zona, Gusha, Halala. So she always has that label. She's always forever. She was an Almana. She was a Gusha. She was a Halala, and she still is. But Mukha Seitz and the Bulgaris is only the Isser on the entry into the marriage. The entry into the marriage has to be a Basula. But this Kohen, he did wrong. He shouldn't have taken her. That was an Avera. But since Sofa, Leos Bulgaris, Tachta, if she would have married kosher, also, if she would have been a Basula, she would have eventually become 12 and a half years old, and she would have eventually lost her Basulim. So too, the more is asking, there shouldn't be a problem in this Kohen I mean, he's not allowed to take her. This case, the first case, Anusa Sasmo, Mafuta Sasmo, he wasn't supposed to marry her because even though it's his own doing, but when he comes to marry her now, he's not allowed to marry her because the Torah wants him to take a basula and she's a baula. But in Nasa, the Gemara is challenging Rav. Rav says he has to divorce her. The Gemara is challenging, he shouldn't have to divorce her. The same way of Bulgaris in the Mukas Eitz, he's not allowed to take her. Once he took her, she's allowed to stay. So too, it could be that he should not have to divorce her once he took her. So even though it's true he took her as a Ba'ula, he shouldn't have, but now that she's a Ba'ula, that doesn't bother us. So the Gemara ends with a kasha. It doesn't say an answer, but it seems Allah is still like Rav. I don't know. The Gemara doesn't say the answer. What's the answer?
Right there. I'm sorry. What you're showing in the yellow.
Yes.
It seems like, why does it say you nasa and sweet?
That's what the Brisa says. The Brisa is, you came a little bit late. So the Gemara did ask that Rav says he has to divorce her. So what does it mean in nasa and nasui? It says, so the Gemara explains that means something else. That means that as far as Mafuta to pay Knas, he doesn't have to pay Knas, as far as something else. But as far as a get, it doesn't mean he could stay married. He's not allowed to stay married. The marriage took effect. Has some halachic implications that the marriage took effect. But it doesn't mean to say that he could stay married. And the Gemara is challenging Rav, no, it's mashma that he should be able to stay married. And the Gemara doesn't answer the kasha.
So why wouldn't the kasha be, if it's with a nusa, why wouldn't it also just be with a regular bia? If he married her, then he's now a Kohen who's married.
Yeah, so that's not a question. Everybody holds that if he married who, an anusa or a regular woman, he married a regular woman. He married a basula, and then after the first,
anusa is not by him.
There is anusa sas. Yeah, but that means it was not in marriage. Anusa sasma means he had raped her.
And he has to divorce her.
He raped her, and then he married her. They shouldn't have gotten married. It's very to get married. She's a bula. He raped somebody. He raped a woman, and then a Kohen gadol, a Kohen gadol.
He has to divorce her.
That's what we're talking about.
So how
Rav
come
says
in this case in the end, why wouldn't that also be for just that he married her?
The Gemara is asking the question. This is the Gemara's question. Rav said that even though he married her, he should not have. He has to divorce her. And the Gemara is asking that there's another statement that says, and it happens to be who said the statement. Rav himself, Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. Rav himself said that this case, Bulgaria's Luka states, if he shouldn't marry, but if he did, he's allowed to stay married. And the Gemara is asking, what's the difference? You're asking what's the difference. That's the Gemara's question. What's the difference between these two cases? Rav says, but Bulgaria's Luka states, he shouldn't marry, but if he married, he may stay married.
Oh, that's the kasha.
That's the kasha. And the Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara doesn't know an answer. The Gemara doesn't know the difference. The case of the person who was Anusa Sasma with Sasma also, even though he shouldn't have married her, but once he married, he should be able to stay married. And Rav didn't say so. Rav said, mostly beget. So the Gemara doesn't know the difference. So I surely don't know the difference. And Allah still seems to be that way. Even though, according to, I didn't look into it, but it seems to be according to the numbers over here. We do pass like Rav, even though the other halachas are true, that Bulgaris, even though he shouldn't marry, but if he married, he may stay married. But by the person, the Nusa Sasmo, with the Sasmo, he's not allowed to stay married, and the Gemara doesn't know the difference. Next again. Anusas Chavero Mafutas Chaver. This is the Brisa we quoted before, and we're quoting it again, and we're going to analyze it. A Kohen Gadol married a woman who was raped, or he married a woman who was seduced, and she's not a sula, she's a ba'ula, and Allah is a mitzvah to say that he's not allowed to marry a ba'ula, dafka basula, kim. He transgressed by marrying her. He transgressed, and I say,
is a Kohen?
No, somebody else.
And who we're talking about, Kohen Gadol still?
Yeah, because only Kohen Gadol has a law that he has to marry a virgin. The Kohen Gadol doesn't have to, as long as she wasn't divorced. So if
but Chavera can mean that.
Anybody else, another Jew. The anusa of a kosher Jew. He's a kosher Jew, but he had relations with a woman, and he shouldn't have. But what did he do? He accomplished. He made that she should be a ba'ula, so he's not allowed to marry. The Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry her. But if he did, the nasa, so also he'd have to. It seems that he'd have to divorce her. That thing one doesn't talk about because it wasn't anusa sasmo. But the question is, if the child born is a chalal or not. Nasa, this might be another room if you're looking for a Gemara.
Yeah, I'm just going to squeeze behind you.
That's the machlokes over here. If the child born of this relation that he stayed with a woman who was raped, she wasn't a besula. Here it seems that he definitely does have to divorce her. Whatever the Gemara spoke about before, for some reason only applies to himself, to his own Maisa. He's the one who made her into bula. But if he married a woman who was raped before marriage, before he married her, then it seems for sure he has to divorce her. But the discussion is going to be if the child born is a chalal or not.
It was less than 3 months.
We
don't know who the child is.
No. He was born.
We know it's his child.
It's his child, and
she was raped, and there's no. In 3 months passed.
Yes, and he's not allowed to marry her because she's a bula. He married her, and they had a child. Is the
And now
child a
that
chal?
child is a chal.
That's the
Has nothing to do
question.
with the rape. It has to do with her being.
But he married a chal. He married this woman, right? He married this woman.
Yes.
So the child, one of them is a chalal, or the child is a kosher. So that's going to be the sugya. Why should the child be a chalal or not? I'm Rav Huna Rav. Allah Kabbalah ben Yaakov, like it says that it's a chalal. So Rav Paskin, yes, chalal. The Chin Rav Gidlam Rav also Allah Kabbalah ben Yaakov, the child is a chalal. Ikidam Yom Rav Huna Rav, my time of the Rav ben Yaakov. So we're passing that it's a chalal. And why should it be a chalal? So Rashi introduces that there's the Gemara assumes that only a chayve lavin would produce a chalal. We spoke about mamza once upon a time. What produces a mamza? We came out that some hold even chayve lavin, some hold only chayve mises bezdin. We're in the middle. We paskin that only chayve krisis. Chayve krisis produces a mamza. Now what a new sugya? What produces a chalal? So the Gemara is assuming initially that only chayve lavin would produce a chalal. And that means if a Kohen would marry Almana, Grusha, Zona, so then the child born is going to be a Chalal. But this is only an Asay. Here, the woman was not the Almana, she wasn't a Chalal, she wasn't a Grusha. What was she? She wasn't a Basula. So it's only an Asay. So the Gemara doesn't think that the child should be a Chalal. So that's why the Gemara is examining. Why should my time ben Yaakov? Why should the child born from this Be'ula, why should the child be a Chalal? The Gemara says, Savala Kabbalazah. Yesterday we had a Belazar that holds Pani Ba'ala Pnuya is a zona, that even though there was no Isser, there was an Isser, they weren't supposed to marry without marriage, but he wasn't an apostle, but he wasn't an apostle person, he was a kosher person. But if a Pani means a bachelor, that he had relations with a Pnuya, a girl who was not married, also it makes her in a zona. We don't pass like that. We pass she's not a zona. But according to Belazar, she's a zona. If she's a zona, then it's a chayve lavin. It's not only she's a bula. It's worse. It's not going to be only the fact that she's not a virgin, but she is a zona because she had relations with a man out of marriage. Not that she was married out of marriage. She wasn't married without marriage. So according to Belazar, she became a zona, and now it's a chayve lavin, and that's why he holds that the child born is a chalal, because the child born of a union of a chayve lavin, that we understand is a chalal. But we don't. But the issue is that true? Is she a zona or not?
What's the love?
The love is almana ugusha v'chalala zona. I say the lo yikafu. The kohen gadol is not allowed to marry. Should not take a zona. Also, a kohen headed also cannot take a zona. And if they did, it's chayve lav, and the child's going to be a chalal. But we're not going to pass. The chachamim pass not like that. The chachamim pass that a pani abba pnuya is not a zona, not a zona. Right. Comes out if Rav passes like a Belazar ben Yaakov, it comes out he's passing like a Belazar that holds that she's a zona. Say, is that so? We passing always like a Belazar ben Yaakov. That we had a couple of pages ago, or a couple of while ago, that was found in the Megillas Yuchsin in Yerushalayim. Halacha Belazar ben Yaakov. He doesn't say so much, but whenever he talks, he passes like him. Here, Belazar ben Yaakov said this, that the child is a chalal, and you're saying that he holds like a Belazar, that the mother is a zona, the fact that a Pani Baal made her into a zona, and they're going to pass like that. They take out these words Amarav because the Gemara doesn't seem like that, but Rav Amram says, we don't pass like a Belazar who makes her a zona. So it'll be a contradiction while we pass him. If you pass like a Belazar ben Yaakov, and we don't pass like a Belazar, you're saying it's the same thing. You're saying the reason why Belazar ben Yaakov says that Charles is chalal is because he holds like a Belazar that Pani Abba is a zona. We don't pass him that the Pani Abba is a zona. How can we pass like a Belazar ben Yaakov that the child is a chalal? So, Kasha, that's a problem. It's a problem. How could we pass him that the child is a chalal if we don't pass him that the mother is a zona? So the Gemara is going to answer a different teretz. But we assumed that only chayve lavin produces chalal. That's not so. That's a machlokes. That Belazar ben Yaakov holds that chayve asay also produces chalal. So it's true. It's only an asay. It's not going to be a chayve lavin. It's not going to be a zona. She's not a zona. It's only going to be an asay. What's the asay? That he should marry a basula, and she's not a basula. But Belazar ben Yaakov holds that a chayve asay is enough to produce a chalal. Yesh chalal mechayve lavin kamefli. They're arguing if the chalal is produced from a union of a chayve asay. Belazar ben Yaakov sava yesh chalal mechayve asay. Rabbanan savi en chalal mechayve asay. And now we're going to pass them like. So does it make a zona? No. We pass them like not like a Belazar. It doesn't make you into a zona. But as far as the union of a chayve asay, that it what's the asay of a abula, that does make the child to be a chalal. Rabbanan Sabi ein chol lo mechai v'yaseh. Where does he get it from? My Talmud of Elazar ben Yaakov. How does he get that the chai v'yaseh make a chol? Tichsiv almano. This is the pasuk over here. Maybe let's highlight the pasuk. Almano gusha b'chal lo zana es eila lo yikach kim b'solom yamav yikach isha. And by the way, it says v'lo yichalel zarol ba'amav. It says that a kohen gadol should not take an almana, a widow, a divorcee, a chalala, a zona, lo yikach. Rather, he should just take a basula. And then at the end, then it says lo yichalel zarol ba'amav. He should not profane his children. That means his children are going to become a chalal if he does. So he says akulu. It's going in everything. The pasuk says all these things. First achavi lavin, almana, gusha, halala, zona, lo yikach. That's allowed. Then it says kim basula. That's the asay. And then it says, don't make a cholol. That means if he does any of these avarice, it makes a cholol. That means that even on the asay, it also is a cholol. So Elazar ben Yaakov says that's what the pasuk says. That even chayv asay, also the child is a cholol. But Rabbanan say not. Rabbanan eila. Where's the word eila? Here it is. Es eila. Eila hifseka inyan. That there's a division between the first four that are all lavin, and then besula, amana, gusha, halala, zona, eila loika. Don't take. And that eila is a stop. And then it says ki and basula. So he says that when the pasuk, since the pasuk divided it, so the beloy chalel is going only on one of the two categories. It's not going on the second one, because then he wouldn't have to have the division. If chayv yaseh makes a chalel, then surely the chayv lavin. So he says it's going back only on the beginning of the pasuk. Rabbanan eila hifseka inyan, that the eila divides it, and the mela the loy chalel is only going on the first part of the pasuk, not on the second half of the pasuk. So chayv lavin produces a chalel, and chayv yaseh not. But Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov says eila lemut nida. That he also has to have something to do with the word Eila, not that it divides it into two, but it's coming to say that even though Chayve Lavin and Chayve Asay, everything makes a cholo, but don't think that if a Kohen has relations with his wife Nida, which is Chayve Kares, it's even worse than all this, that's Chayve Kares, don't think that the child is going to be a cholo, even though it's terrible. And we had the same halacha about a mamzer, that even though Chayve Krisus makes a mamzer, but that doesn't mean that the child born of a Nida is a chorus. We had a drasha is a mamzer. And we had a drasha for that. Now we're talking about a cholo, that the child born from a nida also is not a cholo. Kamanos lo datanya me'ela ata osa cholo v'ata osa cholo menida. Kaman kav Elazar ben Yaakov. The Gemara says a drash from this word ela that you learn out that nida does not produce a cholo. So that's what Elazar ben Yaakov talking, because Rabbanan had agreed to halacha, but they have a different drasha. According to Rabbanan, the word ela is used to divide and say that chayve yaseh don't make a cholol, but to say that the word eila is coming to tell you that a nida doesn't make a cholol, that's only Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov talking. And the Gemara came out. We pass on like Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov lichler eila lebesof kasha. So there's a kasha that asks on this drasha that if the purpose of eila is not to divide, but it's rather to tell you that a nida doesn't make a cholol, so the placement of the pasuk, why did the pasuk put the word eila over here? It should have been after you finished everything. It said all of the halachas, almana, grusha, halala, zona, only a basula, lo yichalel. Then it should say also Eila, that a nida doesn't make a cholol. But how come it's stuck in between? So I think Gemara says kasha. We don't know. That's a nice kasha, but we're not going to knock off Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. We do pass like Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Yesh cholol mechai v'yaseh, and we don't pass like Rabbi Elazar that says that panui makes a zona. So these are two panui, a bachelor that has relations with a panuya. How do you say a girl that's not married? Ravak and Rivaka.
Yeah.
So the child born is not a zona. We pass. Rabbi Elazar holds it is a zona. We pass it's not a zona.
How far was that price of the Tanya? Me'ila tavseh halal. Me'ila tavseh halal.
Until the word minida. So let's finish. We finish that sugya. What did we learn? The first sugya was about Anusasasma Futasasmo. He's not allowed to marry her because she's a bula. And the Brisa seems to say he can stay married. Rav says not. We pass him that not. And there was a question that defined by Mukasates and a Bulgaris, he's not allowed to marry her. But if he did, he's allowed to remain married. What's the difference? The Gemara doesn't know. But the Gemara seems to say that that's Allah anyway. So if he married Anusasasmo, Mufutasasmo, he must divorce her. Even if he married, not allowed to marry her, but she's a bula. And if he did, he must divorce her.
That's not allowed.
That's what it seems, yes. And Bulgaris and Mukasates, he's not supposed to marry. He was over Asay, but once he married, he's allowed to stay married. As far as the Nusas Chaveru, he's not allowed to marry. If he married, he must divorce her. And Machlokis, if the child's a cholo, we pass like Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, Mishras Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Kavanaki, that the child is a cholo because Chayve Asay also make a cholo. You don't pass like Rabbi Elazar that says that she becomes a zona. Panuya does not make her a zona. But even though it's not his own, it's only a bu'ula, which is a chai v'yaseh, that also produces a chola. And also says neither doesn't produce a chola. New sugya, which is how do you call it? Related topic. It's not the same subject. Now it goes on to the din that a kohen is not allowed to become tummy to a mace. That's the din of a kohen. But it does say to the 7 relatives he's allowed to. Who are the 7 relatives? A father, mother, son, daughter, a brother, sister, and a wife. But by the sister, it says, so there's a clause, a condition, that only if she's not married, unmarried sister. Once she's married, then it's not allowed to be matami. But it says more than that. It says she also she has to also be a virgin. So now we're talking about, so it's related topic, because we had a din about a basula, a virgin, all the lachas of virginity as far as the Kohen Gadol, that he has to marry after a virgin. So that was our sugya. So it's a related topic to talk about what does basula mean by the din of a Kohen to become tamei to his sister who died, and what does it mean over there, basula? So that's how we get into the sugya now. So the Gemara is going to have a machlokis, and I'll just have a chart over here that might be helpful. Is that showing on the screen on the Zoom? Those who have the Zoom, are they? Does the screen show it?
Yes, we see it.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. This is too small. So maybe I'll just go through the 2 sheets, then we'll see it inside. So the pasuk is in the middle on the blue. That's the pasuk. To his virgin sister that is close to him, that did not become to a man. He's not married. To her, he could become tamei. The Kohen could become tamei to his sister, who's a virgin, who's not married, and if she died, he could become tamei to her. So we have here 2 opinions how to dash from the pasuk. There's a Meir of Yehuda, and there's a Shimon. Really, it's a Yossi also, but there's one point that Rav Shimon is going to say Yossi disagrees. That's going to also show. So the first one is about basula. Maybe what is that?
Arusa. Achoso Arusa. Says that.
So I'll just read it on the chart, then we'll go into the Gemara. So I don't know if I should do the order of the Gemara, but I'll do the order of the pasuk. The first rush is Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, how they dash in the pasuk. They're going to say basula means an anusana. If his sister was not a virgin because she was raped, and then she died, he cannot become tamei, even though she never got married. But she's not a basula. The pasuk says besides being unmarried, she also has to be a basula in order for the Kohen to make tamei to her. The brother Kohen to be matame to his sister is only if she's a basula. She's not a basula, and that everybody agrees to. We'll see that around. Rab Shimon also agrees to that on the bottom. But this is Rab Meir and Yehuda. Basula comes to exclude anusana. Hakirova. What if she's an arusa? She got married to somebody, but not fully. There's irusin and nesuin. So only an arusa. Is she called married or not? So he says the word hakirova means she's close to him, means that she's still at home. She didn't yet go out nesua. So then, even though she became an arusa to somebody, she's still considered unmarried. As far as this halach, he's be allowed to be matame to her. A love comes to tell you a bulgaris.
Means allowed to be matame, meaning what he can do evil.
No. A Kohen is not allowed to become tummy to a mace.
So to become tamei,
He's allowed to become tummy to the 7 relatives. Well, one of the relatives is a sister who's unmarried, virgin. So here, if she's not a virgin, he can't become tummy to her. He can stay, has to stay outside. But if you're home, he has to stay outside. He can't go inside. If it would be, and akrova means even though she's a rusa, she married out, but she didn't get fully married. She didn't consummate the marriage. So then he may. She's not. He what? He could become tummy. Right. He could bury her. A love is coming to say that even if she's a bulgaris, we had a question about a bulgaris. Maybe she's not such a basula. We saw it by Kohen Gadol. It wasn't so simple. That over there we had the mission that says Rav Shimon, Rav Elazar say that bulgaris is not anymore a basula, even if she didn't have relations with anybody. But here, she may. This is he may. She's not called she's still called a basula. That's enough of a basula that he may become tummy to her. The brother may become tummy to a sister who's a bulgaris.
And the green is Rabbi Yehuda.
All right. All this is Ramein of Yehuda, right?
The green. Okay.
And then it continues Ashel Ha'isalish, and that she did not get married to a man. She's not married. So that comes to say mukaseitz. That if the hymen was removed not by a man, not by a bia, by mukaseitz, whatever that would mean, mechanical, whatever happened. So she's also enough, even though she's not a basula, she doesn't have her virginity. That's enough virginity. As long as the virginity was not taken away by a man, it was taken away by eights. So then she also he's also allowed to become tamei to a sister who's a mukaseitz. That's the way that Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda dash in the pasuk. Rabbi Shimon on the bottom, and also Rabbi Yossi, they say in the beginning they also agree that anusa, Sulam is not an anusa. But Rabbi Shimon says, Rabbi Shimon only, he says mukaseitz also not. That Basula is also coming to exclude that a mukaseitz, his sister's a mukaseitz, she doesn't have her hymen, so he's not allowed to become tamei to her, even though it was not done through bia. And we have to skip a little bit to come back here. Asher lo hoisa, or the ish, he says arusa not. Before Rabbi Meir said arusa yes, but here he says arusa is already too much. Asher lo hoisa, she didn't become to a man. Coming to a man is even erison also, kedushin. Again, erison doesn't mean engagement. Erison means kedushin. So if she did have kedushin, then he's not allowed to become tamei to the brother now. That's machlokes Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda against Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yosef. But now they go back and they say, what if she was an arusa but she got divorced from him? Arusa, that she got erison, but then they got divorced from the erison. Now they had the suit. So then he may, yes, that's close enough that he may come tamei to a sister. And a love he agrees there's a bogeres may. And the Gemara says,
What's the last thing you said?
which one?
The one.
Bogeres. That is
Bogeres,
called,
that's
is good enough. She's not, even though she's not mamash basula, that's enough. She just, by becoming 12 and a half, that her basulam are not as close as they were before, that doesn't take away this, even though he's had by Kohen, brother was an issue. Here, the pasuk comes to say that it's not an issue.
But you can regrow her hymen? Is that what
No,
you're
no, no,
saying?
nothing to do with that. She's not called that. She's not a basula because of that. Nothing to do with regrowing.
She had
She
a
did-
relationship.
No relation. Who said
No.
relation? No relation. She grew up. She's a
Just the
13-year-old.
age.
She's a 13-year-old girl. And
I see.
And one point Rabbi Yossi argues, Rabbi Yossi, even though he's on the side of Rabbi Shimon, I lost him.
There you go.
Okay, that even though
I don't know why Bogeres is mentioned. There was no kasha on Bogeres. She's
we've been
normal.
here for a couple of days, we talked about Bulgaris. It's not just a basula. If by Kohen Gadol, it's not so simple. It could be that Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry. That's the halacha. Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry Bulgaris, but she's not a basula. Me'achuz. The fact that she gets big and her body starts getting bigger, the basula was not as closed as it was when she was younger. So that's a question. Here it says that that's not
No,
an issue
that's
as
why
far as
he's gonna marry earlier. She's got to be under 12, under Bogeres.
right. That's what we're talking about. And now there's one point that Yossi argues, even though Yossi in general is going to be on the side of Rabbi Shimon, but one point he argues that Rabbi Shimon said that a mukaseitz also is excluded from the basula. He excludes her, and he says no. If she's a mukaseitz, then he cannot become tamei to his sister who's a mukaseitz. And Rabbi Yossi learns out from this word leish, he's going to learn out that he agrees to that. And at this point, he agrees again to Rabbi Yehuda that a mukaseitz may, even though she doesn't have her basulim, but he may come tamei to her sister. That's the issue that we're going to do now in the Gemara. Here we go. Here we are. Achoso, Arusa. So this is all about a sister. The Kohen's sister that is not allowed to become, that died, and the Kohen is not allowed to become tamei to her only if she's the Sula, Shelah, Isela Ish, all Akrovai love. So we're going to go through all these issues. Here it talks about 4 issues: Arusa, Anusa Makuta, Mukaseitz, and a Bogeres. So first, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda talk in the beginning. Arusa, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Omer Metamela. Rabbi Shimon, Omer Metamela. That's machlokes. If Kohen could become tamei to his sister who was arusa to somebody, so she's a little bit married, but she's not fully married. How about anusa mafuta? If she was raped or seduced, then everybody holds she's not a basul anymore. So the Kohen cannot become tamei to a sister who's a buula. How about if she's a mukaseitz? Ein metamela devi Rab Shimon. Here Rab Shimon is the one who talks only. Before we had Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon, here only Rabbi Shimon talks. Rabbi Shimon says that the mukaseitz also is not a basul anymore. Rabbi Shimon Omer Rui l'kohen gadol tamela, Shein Rui l'kohen gadol ein betamela. Rabbi Shimon says that the din of a chosa basula is the same din as by basula that a kohen gadol. The same way a kohen gadol is restricted to a basula, so the same halachas of basula over there apply here. And he says that a mukaseitz is not, a kohen gadol is not allowed to marry. A kohen gadol may not marry a mukaseitz. And therefore, he says that the Kohen may not come tamei to his sister who's a mukaseitz because she's also not a basula.
If he's not Kohen Gadol.
A Kohen is not allowed to become tamei to his sister only if she's a basula. 2 different halachas. One is a Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry a basula. Bula, only a basula. We're talking about a different halacha that also has to do with basula, but it's a related topic, not the same halacha. We're not talking about that a kohen has to marry a basula. We're talking about a kohen whose sister died. He's only allowed to become tummy to her if she's a basula. So he's saying that the basula here and the basula there is the same one. If
I'm
you
just
say
asking why you're learning
Because it says
the
that
Kohen from Kohen Gadol.
because basula, we're talking about a basula. Again, we're not talking about that he's not allowed to marry. We're talking about the Kohen. So the talking of a Kohen to her sister. So over there, there's a lach of basula. Here is a lach of basula. There it says the Kohen Gadol can only marry a basula. Here it says only can become tummy to a sister who died if she's a basula. But it's the same basula. So the same over there, basula means mukasei it's not called a basula. So too, a mukasei it's not a basula. How about a bogeres? Mitami la divrei kol adam. That's a strange law. Divrei kol adam. Everybody holds that a bogeres is yes considered a basula as far as these halachas, and you're going to see even though by Kohen Gadol not, but over here everybody's going to hold that it is enough that he could become tummy to a sister even though she's a bogeres. Not kind of brisa.
Nobody argued on that?
No one argues on it. On the chart, look on the chart. Bogeres, here it is.
I see, thank you.
Okay.
On the chart.
Check.
My time now again was analyze the brisa. My time they're made by where do they get it from? The Dashi Haki. I don't know if I can put it on the same time. Let's see if we can get it on the same time.
Put it down a little bit.
We'll try this. Let's see what we can do. That doesn't let me make it smaller. No. Okay, I wasn't
Sometimes from the corner. They're like
from the corner.
Push that, what happened? What if you push
No,
that?
then it opens up all the way.
Oh, yeah.
So no, we don't want that. Okay, add up. No, it's not going. Okay, let me try to put it down. Also, no.
Ah, there you
Okay, we'll try.
go.
Where are we holding? Up. My timer, the Rabbi Yehuda. Dashi Hachi. I just need a little bit more help over here. No, okay. Dashi Hachi. The la chosa basula, prat la anusa. Okay, la chosa basula, prat la anusa. Omafuta. Yachol shani. Okay, every time I touch it, it's gonna get. Yachol shani motzi. Okay, it's gonna bother him. It's bothering more than it's doing good. Yachol shani motzi. Af mukas eight. Tamabam mashallah isalish. That la shallah isalish says the mukas eight yes.
I'm sorry, I got lost. Prat la nusa.
Umafuta. Anusa is the same thing. She's not a virgin, right? So the word basula takes. I didn't write mafuta in the chart, but it means anusa and mafuta is the same thing. No difference if it was against her will or she agreed. She's not a virgin anymore.
Okay.
So the word basula comes to exclude anusa. You might think they're also going to exclude a mukas eitz. That only somebody that the problem is that if she had relations, but if she didn't have relations, then only a mukas eitz. So then she is permissible. Means that the Kohen would be able to become tummy to a sister. Misha, it doesn't let me go slowly. Okay. Misha hoisa, Misha havayasa al ish yasazush and havayasa al ish. That the way that she became was not through a man; it was just a mukas eitz. So that's not excluded. The next thing it says the word hakrova. That's the next word hakrova. The rabo sarusa. That arusa, even though she is partially married, but not enough. She's still close to the brother. So he's allowed to become tummy to her. A love. How about the word a love? Where's the word a love? Here's the word a love. A love. It's coming to say a Bulgaria. The rabbis of Bulgarians. That's the drasha of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. The Masakasha halamali kro. What are you passing for about a Bulgarians? Rabbi Meir basula people mix us basula mashma. If you go back to Kohen Gadol over there, it said Rabbi Meir is the one who said the Bulgarians not. But it was a fancy drasha. It said basula basuleha. Remember basula, bibsula. So over there it said basula alone would have meant the Bulgarians is enough of a basula. That basula doesn't mean 100%. 95% is also good enough. So Bulgarians, that's mostly so that's the way it says basula does mean that. That's because it says bibsula. That's the reason that it means Bulgarians not. But over here that doesn't say bibsula. That's the most cash. But you have to have a special pasuk of they love to include even the Bulgarians. The word basula means a Bulgarians also. That's said by Kohen Gadol. It's true. So Rashi says the Gemara is saying about another pasuk that it happens to say Nara Basula. Rashi brings down Ish Nara Basula. So over there it does say that it has to be a Nara. You might think over here also a special drasha Kamash Malan. You can make it more simpler maybe that it means you would have learned that once you have by a Kohen Gadol that over there Basula tells you even a Bulgaris is not good enough. You might think here also. So you need a special pasuk to say that as far as the brother becoming tummy to his sister, a Bulgaris is good enough. That was all the drasha of Rab Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Now the Gemara is going to darshan the drasha of Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yossi, except for the point about the Mukaseitz. Okay, it's not so good this way, but okay, we'll do the best we could. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, my time, Darshi. Okay. They put that in also, right? That they say, this is Rabbi Shimon, we'll see, that he says that a mukas, oh, let's do this over here. Okay. That they say that the word basula comes to exclude anusa and mukaseitz. But it's not going to be Rabbi Yossi. We're going to see Rabbi Yossi at the end doesn't agree to this. But Rabbi Shimon says that the word basula is coming to exclude also mukaseitz.
Only Rabbi Shimon holds against
Right. True. Asher lo ha'isa katla rusa. Yeah, Asher lo ha'isa says a rusa not. Even though Rabbi says rusa, yes, he says a rusa not. That's because she's become to a man already, even with Erison alone. Hakrova the Rabbas Arusa, Shen is Garsha. Even though they say Arusa not from Asher lo ha'isa, but they also agree that if she got divorced from that Erison, then the brother, then she died, then the brother would be able to become a tummy to her. And a love, the Rabbi says a Bulgaris, and he agrees to that. Okay, that's the end of that. Now the Gemara has the kasha. Approval the Rabbi Arusa and his Garsha. What do we say? That even though she was an Arusa, she got divorced, the brother could become tummy. The Gemara has the kasha. Well, I'm Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon is the one who says that it depends. It's the same halacha. Whatever you say basula by Kohen Gadol, as far as marrying, so too the brother to become tummy to his sister who died is the same criteria. And over there, Rabbi Shimon holds that Arusa Shen is. What do I know about this? Arusa Shen is Garsha. You wouldn't be able to.
Yeah,
That's called the Grusha also, even a Grusha from Erison. Even a Grusha from Erison is also not allowed to marry the Kohen, even the Kohen Hedjed, not only Kohen Gadol. So how come he is saying that she's allowed to marry, that the Kohen could become tummy to a sister who's a Grusha and Garsha? Shani Yosef, the Rabbi Rachman Krov, but it's a pasuk over here. You're right, that it's not here, it's going to be an exception. Because here we have this drasha, so Krov is an exception. Yachim Bukas it's Nami, Rabbi Krova. If she's saying that there's extra pasuk, so then Mukas says also you should say, once it says Krova, it's coming to the Mar that also. The Gemara answers, Achas Lo Shtayim. Here, Achas Lo Shtayim means one drasha, not two drashas. This is the same as Rashi's shot before. We had the Rambam says one wife, not two wives. Here it doesn't make sense. Here, everyone agrees, Achas Lo Shtayim means one drasha, not two drashas. Umar Royce, how do you know which one to say? You have a choice of Mukas Eitz or Arushas and Garsha. The answer is, how is Havadol? That's why we're going to say that one is not included in that Krova.
If you roll that little roller there, can you make it smaller maybe? In the middle of the hand there?
Which one are you talking about?
In your hand, you roll that. Does it make it smaller? Yeah, does it make it smaller? Does it go smaller?
What do you mean to make it smaller?
Smaller, so it doesn't bother the rest of the.
No, it doesn't make the chart
Doesn't-
smaller. It
doesn't
doesn't
make
make the
chart
chart smaller. Okay. I'm sure there's something to do. I just don't know what to do. The Gemara continues. Rabbi Yossi, with the Shafkil of Azuge, Mechlad the Mukas Eitz Rabbi Yossi. It started off this discussion of Rabbi Yehuda against Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon. But then when it came to Mukas Eitz, only Rabbi Shimon spoke. He did Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yossi didn't join him over there. Since he left his partner, Mechlad the Mukas Eitz Rabbi Yossi, he agrees, even though in the drushes we're stuck now. Minale, the answer is Mulahis al Ish. The answer is Chad Mulahis Chad Mulaish. So put that on over here. That The Master Kasha that how could Rabbi Yossi seems to agree. Mukasei says yes, enough. He could become Tameh, but then he agrees to Rav Meir. But the question is that the way that Rav Meir learned it out was from this pasuk, Asher lo yisrael ish. But Rav Yossi agrees that the Rosh you're learning out to exclude Arusa. So I use the pasuk already. So the Gemara says we divide the pasuk into two. Rav Yossi will say Asher lo yisrael, that's enough to exclude Arusa. But the word ish is still there to say that it's only a problem if it was a bia from a man, but Mukaseitz is kosher, and therefore Rav Yossi will learn that a Mukaseitz is enough that the Kohen could become Tameh to his sister who was a Mukaseitz. The one continues, A love, the Rabbos Habogeres, from Rab Shimon, Besula Shlema Mashma. The more similar, but the more asked the Kohen Rameir, here's the opposite question. We spoke about a Kohen Gadol, and what's Allah Habogeres by a Kohen Gadol? We had a focus over there, Besula, and over there we said that they're arguing, what does Besula mean? When it says the word Besula, does it mean 100% or even 95% is good enough? A Bogeres, she's not a complete Bogeres. Over there, Rabbi Shimon is the one who says that the word Bogeres would have meant a complete, even a Bogeres not. And then it says Besula to say that a Bogeres is good enough. But the word Besula alone would have meant a complete Bogeres. So that would have already, what's the kasha going to be again? That he doesn't need a love. Right, he doesn't need the word. Am I saying right? 1 second here. There's a thesis over here. I forgot. 1 second, please. Love the Rabbos Bogeres, the same way that you say by a Kohen Gadol that he holds that a Besula, a Bogeres is kosher to a Kohen. After the drush over there, that a Besula is enough. So learn out over here also that a Besula is a lot. That the Bogeres, he would be able to become tummy to a sister who's a Bogeres, same way by Kohen Gadol. The Gemara answers, over there, he learns it from here. The Davar Shachim, the of the Rabbos, Bogeres, the Basula Shlema Mashma. The only reason that he knows that a Basula means a Basula Shlema is only after you have our pasuk. After you have the extra pasuk, I love to say that it's good enough that even though she's a Bogeres, she's still included in the Basula, then you can learn how to a Kohen Gadol, but only after you have this pasuk. So the one went through all the drushes, and that's finished the sugya as far as Achosa. So this is how it looks. We're going to pass on like, I don't know. I didn't look up the halacha we passing like over here. Where's the machlok going to be? It isn't so relevant because everybody holds anus and not. The question will be by Mukaseitz. Mukaseitz, but here Rabbi Yossi is only against Rabbi Shimon. Yeah, sure. Meir, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yudah, some Mukaseitz also. The Kohen could become tummy to a sister, even though she's a Mukaseitz. Bogeres, everybody agrees, and anus, everybody agrees not. Machlokas would be by Arusa. Arusa, we don't have Arusa nowadays because every sending the suin more or less happens at the same time. So the hechtims we don't have so much. So this would be the halachas over here that the Mukaseitz or Bogeres or we leave out Arusa and the Kohen could become tummy to a sister, but an Anusa not.
The Anusa, isn't she still in her father's house? Where is she?
What's the difference? She's not
considered.
She's not a basula. There are 2 points. The pasuk says it has to be basula and also not married. The pasuk, if it doesn't talk about not being married, say talk about, but it says also basula. The pasuk says she has to be a basula also. She's not a basula. Okay, that was that. The Gemara continues. Nusugya. Mamash nusugya. Tanya Rab Shimon ben Yochai Omer. Gioris pchusam v'bashol v'shon v'yomechad k'shor l'kuna. The halach is that a kohen is not allowed to marry Gioris. We'll have more about it. Other places, a kohen is not allowed to marry Gioris. Why not? One partial reason will be because we're choshet that she was Mazana. Before she became Jewish, so the chazaka will be that she was Mazana, and she's a zona.
She's not chadash before when she goes to the
not as far as this. She's not allowed to marry Gioris. What do you mean chadash as far as what? He's not allowed.
She became a Jew. She wasn't a Jew. She had no dinim. She had no mitzvahs.
Yeah, okay, but she had that's okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
So here it says
the suling return. It doesn't matter what the.
And not in the basula. So we're not talking about a basula. Kohen, she's called a zona.
She's a chazaka of a zona because she didn't going.
Okay, and even though the Chaim was asking that, why do you say Gioris is like a new person, Kotten Shanola, ignore all the past? That you know. But it's not only because the basulim were broken, because there's no din in a basula over here. We're talking about that she's a zona because of that.
Yeah.
So that's like.
There's other ways
Okay, so that's what the Shem Arichai says that less than 3 years old, he married. He wants to. A Kohen wants to marry her. She became a Gioris less than 3 years old. Of course, somebody else was Megayah, But if she became a Gyoris less than 3 years old, so the Kohen could marry her. Shenema, why should she be kosher? Because over there it says by Midian, different story altogether. By Midian it says that they went, 12,000 soldiers went to conquer Midian, they killed, and over there it says that they left women alive, and Moshe came and he was angry, I think the women alive, that's the whole problem, that the lost Midian. So it says that you should kill all of them, but that those that are tough, the children, we'll see soon that it's going to mean 3 years old, then you could leave alone. You could keep alive. But it says the word keep alive for yourself. And the word Nashing means that you're allowed to marry them. And Pinchas was there. Pinchas is a Kohen. Pinchas Imam. So you see that a Kohen would be allowed to marry a Gyoris as long as she was a tough. That the Gyur happened less than 3 years old.
He was Kohen
Why are
Gadol.
you bringing in a Kohen Gadol?
I thought he was.
What's the issue? What's the issue over here?
I
First of all, he
mean,
wasn't a Kohen Gadol. But what's the issue over here? What's the issue? We're talking about a zona. There's a zona issue over here. No Kohen is allowed to marry a Gyoris.
It's some Samuel Kohen.
He's a Kohen, and he's allowed to marry
Right,
this
right.
Yoris that's less than 3 years old.
Right,
So if he's allowed to do it, so you're allowed to do it. That means it's not called the bia. It's not called the bia. It's not called the zona. That's what I'm saying. It's not called the zona. The Gemara says, Rabbanan, what do the Rabbanan do? The Rabbanan argue. They say that it seems only if Shemai Chai says so. But the Rabbanan argue. And what do they do with the pasuk? They say it doesn't mean to take for yourself means to marry them. It means that it means the pasuk shot. Take them. You're allowed to keep them. The rest of them kill, and the tapanoshim you're allowed to keep alive. But it doesn't mean to marry. Okay.
Is that the end of the Bryce? Or we finished the Bryce?
I think the price is over. Is the price over here? Probably here already, but before the parentheses is
Brings the
over.
Ravana. Once it brings the
I
Ravana,
think
you'd expect
I
it.
think that's already the Gemara talking. But whatever you like.
Okay.
The Gemara asks a kashi. So it just says in the pasuk. Read the pasuk says it says the young children that did not have relations. The Gemara takes it literally that they did not have relations. It doesn't say that they're not roy for relations. It says that they didn't have relations. So what are you getting this thing about 3 years old? It says if they had relations, kill them. If they didn't have relations with a man, so keep alive. Then you're allowed to marry them. So why are you saying anything about 3 years old?
Because it's tough.
Asher lo yadu mishkav zachor. It says if they didn't have relations. The Gemara takes it at this point to mean that they didn't actually have relations. The Gemara answers Kid Rav Huna. Rav Huna's Rush is going to show that the pasuk doesn't mean if they have relations or not. It means if they're roy to have relations. Rav Huna Rami. Rav Huna has the contradiction. In the same parasha over there by Midian, it says a woman who had relations with a man, you should kill. So if you take the pasuk simply, it talks about if they actually have relations with a man. If you learn the pasuk simply in the Chumash, I think as you'll get that impression that you'll say the women who had relations with men, kill. The ones that did not, keep alive. But the Gemara is going to say, if you look in the Dika of the pasuk, there's a contradiction. First, it says a woman that was never had relations with a man, that had relations with a man, kill. What could you infer from that? Eino yodas kaimu. But if she never had relations with a man, you may keep alive, even if she's an adult woman. It just says the women who had relations, kill. So what could you say? If they didn't have relations, you're allowed to keep alive. Then it says, and Mechlal, if it says about women, adult women, Mechlal da'ataf, they do kind. That's mashma that the children, even if they have relations, you're allowed to keep alive. That's what it sounds so. But then the pasuk continues, the children who did not have relations keep alive. But if they did have relations, do kill. That's contradiction. If you take the pasuk means if they actually had relations or not, so the pasuk contradicts itself if it's talking about adult women or young children. That's the contradiction. That means the pasuk is not talking. Don't mean the pasuk means if they had relations, didn't have relations. The pasuk means if they're to have relations. So now it talks about Isha Yodas Ishta Mishkav Zocha means that she's old enough to have relations. That means she's 3 years old, so they didn't kill them if they have relations or not. And with the Kol HaTav that are not to have relations, that you're allowed to keep alive again if they have relations or not. We don't care if they have relations. The issue is if they're to have relations. So the cutoff point is 3 years old. So the ones that are above 3 years old kill. The ones that are below 3 years old, you're allowed to keep alive. That it means if they're really boiled, that's what the Torah doesn't want. Doesn't mean actual relations. That's what the pasuk seems to point to the drash. The issue is not if they have relations. The issue is if they're roy to have relations. How do they know who's past the age of? I think it comes out who's past the age of 3 years old or not. It's not a question now if they had relations. How do they know who's exactly talking about little girls, 3 years old, not 3 years old? We're not going to ask them their birthday. How do we know who's 3 years old or not?
Room and tumor, no?
Amar Rav Huna, Bar Bizna, Amar Rav Shimon Chasida, Havim Lefnei Tzitz. That's what he meant.
Mm.
That they passed them before the tzitz. Who had the tzitz over there? I guess Pinchas. Kol shepanei morikos biyadua shu really boiled. But kol shein panei morikos biyadua. If it wasn't, then it was when they came back to the machne already. They came back to the machne already. So then it was a laza. Kol shein panei morikos biyadua shein reuya li boil.
The tzitz means the.
Right. The tzitz means the plate
But
of
Rabbi
previous
just said
lunch.
that, Pinchas was the one with the piz, so he was a conduct.
It doesn't say Pinchas. I don't recall. I think Allah was the Kohen Gadol at the time. But that doesn't mean they weren't in the machne. They came back to Moshe Rabbeinu already. So the Kohen Gadol, the tzitz had the tzitz, and whoever passed by the tzitz, kol shepanei morikos biyadua she really boil. Kol shein panei morikos biyadua shein really boil. If her face would what?
It would shine. or
Miraculous.
would
No, it says that her face would become pale.
Then she had.
That means that she's really bald. That means that she's more than 3 years old. And what?
Where does it say that?
What
That her
thing?
face became big?
Panei morikos. Here it is.
Mhm.
Panei morikos. One line
Thank you, okay.
before it spreads. Panei morikos. 2
Says
lines.
They would get dropsy.
What does it say?
Dropsy. They would get something called hydrocon, where their stomachs would blow up and then it would show excess fluid, and that would make their face turn pale.
Rashi says a miracle. Rashi doesn't say that. Rashi says that was miraculous. Where's Rashi?
Rashi from the Rav.
Here Rashi. I don't think so. Maybe talking about Are you talking about the next word on the first wide line? Hadrokan?
Yeah.
So we're not there yet. We're 2 lines before Morikos. That just means that the face became pale. Here's Rashi. Neisaya. You see it on the screen? Here's the Morikos Neisaya. So our scroll wouldn't say it without the one again Rashi without making a big deal out of it. So
I thought we were talking about if they had relations.
no, that we're just finished talking about. That's not the issue. The issue is if they're going to boil.
So it means
So
they're
that
over
means 3 years old. So I think that's all that we're looking for here. If it's really boil or not. Called she'en panei morikos biyadua she'en really boil.
Marik's Chavero, אין לו חלק בעולם הבא. Anybody embarrasses his friend and makes him.
I don't recall that it says the word morikos
Does it say
over there.
Marikos there?
I don't think so.
What's that?
Anybody who embarrasses.
Malbin panei chaver b'rabim. Malbin. That's why this is morik.
Right.
I think it means the word pale. Someone said the word morikos. I think it means pale. Okay.
Makes
Yeah,
empty.
yeah.
It's
Even though here
empty.
you're look.
Empty
If
of
it's
blood. Rabbi, empty of
morikos,
blood.
raised yud kuf.
Not like
Okay.
empty. Rake of
Good.
blood.
Some will say, okay, whatever you
Some
like.
say
Green,
but-
green,
Green.
pale. Good. Okay. Good.
But Esther was like that.
Good.
He wasn't.
I
she
think
wasn't
also-
raped, very
maybe
sure.
it means
She was Yerokes,
you're
not Marikos.
a crocus.
Okay.
Maybe it's the same word. Okay. Amar Rav Nachman. I think over there also might mean that it means pale, yellowish. Doesn't always mean green,
Oh,
which would mean could be. Amar Rav Nachman. Similar, very broken. So this is what they meant probably. What do they call it now? Hadroken.
Hydrokin.
That's what
or
they mean.
dropsy.
Okay,
Dropsy is a
so-
modern day.
So that's not that. This is already not the subject. The Gemara brings it in Agar. I put in parentheses. Whoever likes that. That is not the issue we're talking about. Some we're talking about really boil if she's 3 years old. Now we're talking about that if there's some kind of a disease and a similar very broken. If someone has this disease, it's a simon that they had illicit relations. Similar vera hadroken. That hadroken is a kind of disease that shows that the person engaged in illicit relations.
I thought we just said that she's rude to be.
I'm sorry, I put in parentheses. That's why I put in parentheses. That is not the subject. The subject is really well. Okay, once the Gemara mentioned there's something about getting the tzitz made on Marikos. That's why I put in parentheses.
what does
Because
Hadroken mean?
you have to ask more. It means some kind of a disease. Some kind of a disease. What is it?
Lakuti Rashi explained both reasons.
Okay, the Gemara brings a similar issue, not exactly the same, but though here the Gemara is going to bring the next issue was a similar related topic, not about Ru'uya Libol, but about actual Libol. That's Kiyos Avadavat Omer Yimsu Yashpei Yavesh Gelad Abba Meis Narab Sula Asher Lo Yadu Ish Mishkav Zachar. That's talking about the Pelegish Begiva and Sefer Shoftim. Over there was a civil war against Sefer Binyamin because of the story Pelegish Begiva. At the end, they overpowered Binyamin on the 3rd day, and over there was very little left of Sefer Binyamin. There were 600 people left, and they had no. And also Bnei Israel had sworn not to give any wives to Shevet Binyamin, and now they wanted they should have a kiyum. They shouldn't get destroyed. So it says over there they were looking to how to get wives for them. So one of the answers they had was there was a city Yavesh Gilad that was Jewish city, and they had not joined Am Yisrael in the war against Binyamin. And they made a cherem against whoever doesn't come is going to be killed. And they didn't come. So Am Yisrael killed them. They killed, besides Binyamin, that they had the civil war, they also killed the people of Yavesh Gilad because they didn't come to the war. And the women, they took for Binyamin. They gave the women of that city to Sheva Binyamin, but for some reason, they only wanted to give the women who never had relations. And I don't know why. They were kosher women, good Jewish women. What's the difference if they had relations or not? The husbands died now. So they're a lot of married. So I don't know. But the pasuk says, yes?
Maybe because the men were mitzvah the kachad all chaveram.
Okay, but that doesn't make the woman should be asked to marry. And it doesn't make a difference if they had relations or not. I don't see the difference. If the whole tribe, the whole city want to go on, but they do want to take the women. So what's the difference if they have relations with their husbands? They're kosher women, they have relations with their husbands. I don't know. But that's what the pasuk says. They wanted Dafka women. It says, that's a Jewish city. They found 400 Narab Basula that never had relations with a man, and those are the ones they gave to Binyamin. And they're not a Gemara says, how do they know who had relations or not? This is a physical test, nothing to do with miracles, that if they would sit on a barrel of wine, if the fragrance, if the smell of the wine would be able to go through the body, that means that she was a bula. I don't know physically how this works, but that's what the Gemara seems to say, that if she's a bula, so then the wine that she's sitting upon will have an effect in her mouth also. And if not, not. No, they how do you say when a fragrance is filling the room?
Waft.
Okay.
Waft.
The more question, why didn't you do the same thing as the sis? The sis before showed if they really bought, so I'll show over here also if they had been, if they had sis. I'm kind of brave of nothing. We don't want to use the Ratzon Lahem Ksiv, the Ratzon for all the pronouns. We don't want to use the test of the sis to know who to kill. It seems that they killed. It seems that they killed the women also. I don't remember, and they didn't want to use the tzitz to decide who's going to live, who's going to die. The Jews. We were some them ksiv. We were some with all the pronouns. They didn't want to use the tzitz for punishment. But the question was, by Midian, they did use it for punishment. Because they're goyim. Because they're goyim. I'm Ravashi lahem ksiv. There was some lahem. Lahem there was some with all the pronouns. Below goyim, I feel the pronouns. That this thing that the tzitz is only used for good, not for punishment, is only by the Jews. But for goyim, it could even be used for punishment. So when it came to decide who's going to live, who's going to die by the goyim, they did use the tzitz, but not by the Jews. So the bottom more come out. So far we had that Rishim Bar Yochai says that the Kohen's allowed to marry Gyoros who became a Gyoros less than 3 years old, and the Rabbanan argued. And now who you pass on like? Rabbi Yaakov Baridi, Rabbi Shulban Levi, Allah Rishim Bar Yochai, that the Kohen is allowed to marry a Gyoros who became a Gyoros less than 3 years old. Amalei Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Yaakov Baridi, Beferish Mi'alach or Bachlolish Mi'alach. How do you know that? That Allah is like Rabbi Shulban, Rishim Bar Yochai. Did you hear it explicitly from Rabbi Shulban Levi, or did you hear it from something? Did you derived it from something else that he said? Mike Lala, what else could he have heard that he derived it from? Then maybe there was a city in Eretz Yisrael that became some rumor about it that there was some problem with the yichus over there. Some Kohanim weren't good over there. Vashiga Rabbi S. Rabbi Rumnus Budka. So Rabbi sent Rabbi Rumnus to check it out. They take out the word bas. They found the Kohen who had married a Gioris who became a Gioris less than 3 years old, and Rebbe said it's okay, they can stay married to her. So that was the possibility. Maybe we heard from Rabbi Shulban Levi said over this story that we passed like Rishim Bar Yochai, that a Kohen could marry a Gioris less than 3 years old. I heard it explicitly, not only the story, I heard the farish that he passed like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. What's the problem if he would have heard it only derived it from the story? What would have been terrible if he would have heard it from the story? Maybe that's only because he married her already, then he can stay married. That wouldn't be a proof that he's allowed to marry her. Only but if he married her, he can stay married. We find earlier on number out we had that a Bogeres and Mukasei, it's a Kohen Godol, was not allowed to marry because she's a Bula, but if he took them, they're allowed to stay married. So too, we see a Chiluk of B'diavad. See here too, even though maybe B'diavad we allowed the Kohen to stay married to this Gioris, but maybe Lachatchila he shouldn't. But the Ma'aseh, what's he talking about? What's the comparison? Ishlam Masam, Sofalias Bogeres Tachtav, Sofalias Ba'ula Tachtav. We said over there the reason why it's mutter, because any woman who a Kohen Gadol is going to marry is eventually going to become a bula. He himself, he's going to marry a basula after the first time. She's a bula. She's not anymore a basula. That's the reason why once he married her, we're allowed to stay because it's not any worse than he would have taken her as a basula. But over here, here, what's going to happen? He's taking a Kohen's taking a woman who a choshesh is zona. Means according to Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, he said less than 3 is not a zona. But according to Rabbana, they don't hold this drasha. Less than 3 is also a zona. So what's the difference if he's going to marry her? He's going to marry, he's going to live with her constantly as a zona. So there's no difference between the Lachatchil and the Eved. So if Rebbe allowed the Kohen to stay married to the Gdoros, it must be because the Lachatchil also is allowed to marry her. That would be a good proof that you possibly like Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai.
How can a 3-year-old become a gear?
By the parents, somebody else could do it. Al das, and then when she comes about bas mitzvah, they'll ask her if she agrees, and then she'll continue. Rav Safra Masni Lo Mechlola V'Kasha Lo Yimushani Le Achi. Rav Safra did say that it was not that we only derived it from the story, and the other kasha, how could you derive it? Maybe it's only b'diavad not lachatchila. And he said, as we just said, that the Rabbi this is no difference lachatchila b'diavad. Only by bageres mukaseitz is the chiluk of lachatchila b'diavad. Here there's no difference. So therefore, it is a good proof that Yehoshua ben Levi, in the name of Rebbe, passed like Yehoshua ben Yochai.
And that was the pasuk of Shimon Bar Yochai.
He passed like Yehoshua ben Yochai. But who that was going to throw it down? Who kana the instead of Gyoros Pusim Bashal Hashem Yamecha. There was a Kohen. He did like that. He married a Gyoros, who became a Gyoros less than 3 years old. What's this? Kohen marrying a Gyoros? That's what he passed in. Amalei Zil Apik Ko Divorcer the Loma Fikna Lachab Yaakov Idi Munach. If not, I'm going to take him out of your ear. Means I'm going to get. Don't rely on him. It doesn't allow it, even though it was quoted so. But we're not going to pass on the so you don't pass on like Shimon Bar Yochai. And a Kohen should not marry Gyoros, even if she became a Gyoros less than 3 years old.
Who was this person? Who was this Rabbi Safra? Who argued this case against this Kohen?
Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak.
He was that big that he could pass all those.
Yeah, he says no pass like that. It's late already, but if we may just to finish up a little bit further to go on one more sugya, Tanya, whoever's on line, I don't see right now, but if it's okay to do one more sugya, Tanya, a different sugya, unrelated, legally unrelated. Is the Kohen allowed to become Tamei to Goyim? A Kohen is not allowed to become Tamei to a Jew. How about if a dead guy? Is the Kohen allowed to become Tamei to a dead guy? So Shimon Bar Yochai, also Shimon Bar Yochai, he says Kivrei Goyim ain't v'tam b'ohel, that the grave of a guy does not give off to Masohel. Why? Shenema v'etein son v'aten sonid son avisi adam atem. By Tumas Ohel it says Adam kamas ba'ohel. Rashi brings down the pasuk. Here it is Adam kamas ba'ohel. A man who dies and all gives off tumah. A going called Adam. The pasuk says Jews are called Adam. You are my sheep, the sheep of my shepherding. Adam atem. You are Adam. Atem kuim Adam. That's the pasuk. Till there's the pasuk, and now we're going to dash in that only Jews are called Adam. Atem kuim Adam. Ve'en Adam kuim Adam. The real man is what Jews are. It means that I'll throw in something from the Ramchal that the original plan of man is what the Jews are. And everybody went down, and only Avraham Avinu came up again to do what the real man's supposed to be. So Adam is Jews. So when it says Adam Kamas Bo'el, it's not a Jew. Meisvei. Mars Kashas, you find other places where Adam means Goyim. Nefesh Adam, here it's talking about by Midian, Shisha Asarollah, talks about how many humans were left from Midian, and it says Adam, it's about Goyim. The answer is Mishum Behema. Over there, it's contrasting humans and Behema. It says how many animals they had, how many, so that you call them Adam. When you're contrasting, so the Goyim also called Adam. But Stam Adam is a Jew. Another kasha, here it's talking about Nineveh, and it says that it's a big city, it has more than 120,000 people. But anyway, it says Adam, it's talking about Goyim. Again, same answer, Mishum Behema. But there's contrasting how many animals there were. There were also animals, humans and animals. So there you can go. That's not the subject. No.
When it's between animals and
humans,
the word Adam.
Right. But plain Adam is only Jews. The Master Kasha, what are you talking about? That a guy doesn't give off tumah. It says, it says over there by Midian that they should make themselves tohor because they had contact with the dead. So there's dead going over there. The Midian that they killed. So you see that the guy gives off tumah. So the Gemara says, don't make Tilchad Yisrael, not because of the guy. Maybe they killed the Jew. Maybe there was a Jew that was dead, and maybe the Jews, they had contact with the Jewish corpse. But the Gemara says, Rabbanan argue, nobody died over there. It says in the pasuk, nobody died. If nobody died, no Jews died in that war. So the ones who died, only the Goyim. And still it says you have to become Torah. Must be because the guy does give off to me. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, the pasuk doesn't mean nobody died. It means that nobody did any avera. That of all the 12,000 people, even though there were a lot of women over there, but Midian, they were careful, and nobody had any avera with a woman. But not that they didn't die. So it could be that a Jew died, and the reason why the pasuk says to become Torah is because maybe they had contact with a Jew, but to have contact with a goy wouldn't give off tumah. And Ravina Amad, so this is the famous psak. Nehidim matinu krome etmuye ba'ohel. The sevadam kemas ba'ohel. Imagva masa mikamim matinu kro. Rav Shimon Yochai just spoke about ohel, like it says Adam kemas ba'ohel. Over there it says Adam. Over there he says that there's no tumas ohel for a guy, but he doesn't mean to say there's no tumas maga and masa. So even Rav Shimon Yochai also agrees. It might call nogea b'chalal, nogea, that they touch the chalal, that they touch the dead man. So this is a machlokes mamish halacha l'maisa. Is a kohen allowed to become tamei to the ohel of a goyish cemetery? According to Rav Shimon Yochai, yes. They don't give off to Ohel. And according to Rabbanan, not. What do you pass them like? It's a machlokes also.
And by the way, it's relevant every Friday, Bas. We go around, we go through the cemetery of the
Mhm,
Arabs,
mhm.
and then we, it's the Kain, it's the Remetzel, they have
So they should be machmer.
they go around.
They go around. So all, whenever there's a tree, whenever there's a tree over a goyish cemetery, you have over there also by Rehov Agron. There's a goyish Arab cemetery over there also. And if you go on Rehov Agron over there, of course, the Waldorf. So if there's a tree that's both over a grave and over the street, even if you don't go in,
But I think they cut that tree. It's Shariafo.
No, it's not too much.
I'm talking about Rehov Agron. Of course, the Waldorf. And over there's a cemetery.
There are two people buried there.
Two.
over the,
And they have a tree over there.
Solomon.
And there's a tree. There used to be a tree.
I think they purposely
Cut it down. That the
branches
Kohen
so
didn't
it
get
wouldn't
in
be
there.
over, so people wouldn't-
So that's machlokes. Kid is a Jew. The Kohen is a Kohen. Usher to come in contact of an ohel to touch the guy, to touch the guy, the corpse or carry. Then everybody agrees that there's tumah. That's the Gemara comes out. Even Rav Shimon also holds that there's tumah to a guy. But ohel, Rabbanan say even that also. Rav Shimon says no. And that's the machlokes Pascha like. So it says it's good to the Kohanim to be machmir and not to come in contact, not even ohel of a guy, to be choshesh for the sheet of the Rabbanan. That's your I'm sorry for going over time.
We enjoyed it, yes,
Well, yeah.
Okay, so we'll be in 2 minutes about Hilchos Borer. Hilchos Borer on Shabbos, starting a new series on Hilchos Borer.
Did we do Borer before?
No?
When they got to be godless, that everyone was killed.
I'm sorry?
For the girls there.
Yeah.
That's
Ah,
also-
that everyone they killed.
Yeah, everyone
They killed.
That was a godless, except
Mhm.
only the-
Mhm.
If it was tiny, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm pretending strong, you know. I'm sorry.
He comes on time.
He's not late?
Waiting. What's that?
I'm trying to get the mishpacha, but it doesn't come in. If I miss it,
If you
will
miss it,
save
I'll-
yours?
What's that?
I'm quoted like 105. I get the question, something like you, who do you enjoy